Welcome to Bloom and Rage, Episode 1. We're going to start in the second scene, because the first scene is our mom talking at us for 10 minutes straight, and as a narrator, I wouldn't be able to compete with that, so we're just going to skip it, and we're going to start here, at the Blue Spruce.
Velvet Cove. Just being here brings back memories.
So as you've probably picked up on, even if you haven't played the game, this is not the story. This is a framing device. Framing devices are almost always the first scene of any given story. If the story has a framing device, it's usually the first thing that gets introduced because it's supposed to frame the rest of the story. So you want the frame in place as early as possible so that the rest of the story can be in frame. I don't really want to talk about framing devices for the next 3 episodes, but I think I'm probably going to have to because the beginning of the game is entirely framing devices. It's just a never-ending parade of framing devices, and we are going to have to discuss them. We might as well start here, I guess. We're going to have some technical talk about framing. So this framing device of being a middle-aged person coming back to our childhood home to investigate our childhood trauma is pretty common. You see it in dozens of different movies and books and shows and games of all sorts. A good example is It, which is literally exactly the same. It's the exact same framing device used in pretty much the exact same way. So the issue I have with this game is the framing devices. I think they are the weakest part of this game, and that's why I don't really want to open by discussing them, because we're going to be discussing the worst part of the game first, and that's a little bit unfortunate, but it's the first thing the game shows us, so we are going to have to discuss it. First, the good news. This framing device is used in terms of, on a technical level, it does provide us with some value.
Take the Bloom and Rage stickers. Put them where everyone can see them.
So we can look around and do this reminiscing. And obviously we can do this because we're in the future and we're remembering what happened.
I burn this place down. I do it. Dude, stop! Let's just go.
The issue here is that there's nothing special about this framing device that allows for this reminiscing. There are dozens of other framing devices that could be used. This is a powerful technique, don't make any mistakes. We don't know who these people are, but we clearly know that the game is going to be about them, and we're laying the groundwork. But it could be any framing device. It does not have to be, a middle-aged lady going back to her hometown. What you would use the middle-aged lady going back to her hometown for is to tell us how to interpret the rest of the story. The whole point of a framing device isn't to give you some plot-relevant way to dispense information. Is to tell you how to interpret the entire story. And a good example of that would be the movie It. The movie It is about dealing with childhood trauma. The framing device is literally a whole bunch of people go back to their childhood home and go through therapy. Now, obviously, it's not real. It's, a killer spider that turns into a clown and so on. But if you look at it, it's pretty clear that this is a movie. It is a movie about dealing with your childhood trauma and understanding that you can't just ignore it. It's going to screw up your life forever if you don't go back home and deal with it, if you don't get therapy, if you don't sort it out in your head, in your heart. Therefore, the childhood events that unfold in the movie are understood to be the source of childhood trauma for the adults. And that's how you're supposed to interpret them. But unfortunately, Bloom and Rage does not really deliver on that front. You can kind of sort of read into it if you try, but it's very wobbly and vague. It doesn't really give you a good frame. It doesn't really tell you how to interpret the rest of the story. Let's do some other examples, right? Another kind of common framing device would be a found footage movie, right? You are looking at objective records of what happened, and you're trying to sort out the past, and there are things left over that you have to figure out, what happened, who survived, whatever your framing device is. You're looking at the objective records of the event and trying to sort it out. That's a fun framing device, and of course it can also do this stuff if it wants to. There's no reason why it couldn't give us the same sort of memories as as this. So it's not like coming back here as an old lady gives us some kind of special power to reminisce. There's a dozen other ways we could do it. Another fun framing device would be fictionalization, right? So in Princess Bride, if you ask a child what the Princess Bride is about, they're going to say it's about Wesley and Buttercup going on high fantasy adventures. If you ask an adult what the movie is about, they're going to tell you that it's about a grandfather telling his grandkid about these wild adventures. That's because the framing device is important. We understand that the story being told is fictional in universe. If Wesley does something that doesn't make sense, or if Buttercup knows something she can't know, it's okay because it's just Grandpa making shit up. We understand that. But more than just an excuse to do certain kinds of storytelling, it also tells us how to interpret the story. What is this story actually supposed to be about? And it's supposed to be about the fact that the grandfather is trying to tell his grandson how much he loves him. But you can't just come out and say it because that's cringe, especially to a 12-year-old, and it's not going to have the same impact as actually telling a story about it, right? So yeah, the story is technically about romantic love, but the romantic love is so unromantic that it's just about love in general, right? And Wesley and Buttercup's love, it starts strong. It never grows. It never fades. It never needs to be proven. It's just locked in at 100% the entire time. Just like the love of a grandfather for his grandson, right? And the story of Wesley and Buttercup is a story about trying to find each other, trying to connect, trying to find a space where you can be together, and trying to find the courage and the timing to make sure that you know how much you mean to each other. Just like the grandfather who doesn't get to see his grandkid very much and is here while his grandkid is sick to tell him a story. Understood through this lens, the story of Wesley and Buttercup is much more interesting than just a story of high adventure, because it carries this weight of understanding that this is a love letter from a grandfather to his grandson, and that is going to radically change how you think about this story and what the events of the story mean. That's a framing device. A framing device tells you how to read the story so that you can get the most out of it. And unfortunately, this framing device of us being 40 doesn't really ever do that. We don't ever get told how to read the rest of the story. We'll talk about that in detail as it happens. So you might be thinking, okay, so this framing device is not your favorite part of the game, but you're really going on about this a lot, right? So you notice I brought up 3 kinds of framing devices, and I explained the 3 kinds just as examples in great detail. This game uses all 3 at the same time, and it uses all of them badly. It's definitely the weakest part of the story. The fact that we have 3 different framing devices and they all suck, it's almost unbelievable. Like, every framing device is used as an excuse to deliver information, but it's never used as an excuse to tell the player how to interpret the story. And we're definitely going to have to go over that. It's possible that it was intended to tell the player how to read the story, but it didn't work on me at any rate. And we're going to go into great detail about that, I'm sure. But I just wanted to make it clear this is where it starts, because it always starts at the beginning. Framing devices are something you open the story with, and we're going to see a lot of them in the next couple of episodes. On the plus side, there are a lot of things that I do like about this opening. It's a very dense opening. It's got a lot of nice tone to it, not a lot of nice textures to it, and we get a lot of fun details out of it. One of the things that I really like about this opening that I think a lot of people aren't going to notice is this. Keep your ear open. Now that might seem small, but when you are doing a walking sim, it is really important to understand how to sell your engagement with the terrain, and that's really good. Obviously, it's not something that's technically difficult. I think every game engine has some kind of very easy way to change the footstep sounds based on the material that your character is on, but the fact that they did it, kudos. That really helped. It helped to sell me on the idea that we are actually here. In the next episode, we're going to go inside this bar and we're going to talk about the opening. See ya.